What's up, everybody? Hope everyone's having a fantastic day. I'm Anthony. On today's video, I got a super easy one, but it is super foundational, something that everybody who wants to explore the self-reliance, homesteading, prepping, whatever kind of lifestyle needs to know, and that is how to properly transplant a perennial. So stay tuned. That's right, today we're going to be talking all about transplanting a perennial. Perennial meaning you plant it one time and it's going to come back year after year after year. Most folks should know how to plant annuals. It's very simple, but when you're doing transplants, especially ones bigger than, say, this big in a cup, you have to do a few more steps. Nothing too crazy, but there is going to be a few things that you can do to help your chance of successful transplanting, and I want to show you that today on this video. Now, for those curious, today is November the 1st. Halloween was yesterday. This is my favorite time of year to transplant anything because it gives you the best chances of success. The biggest problem a lot of folks like to do is because Arbor Day and a few of those other like green planting trees days are usually in the springtime. People like to think, oh, well, springtime is the best time to do your transplants. That is not true. Maybe if you are in a specific certain climate, sure, like a very, very cold climate, maybe I can understand that. But if you live in anywhere below, say, New York, it's probably going to be a lot easier if you transplant in the fall. Now, the whole purpose behind this is because you want to make sure that tree has the best possible chance to survive whatever conditions it's going to run across. Well, if you transplant it, say the springtime, April, May, especially down here in the southeast, it's going to be 95 degrees in the end of May. You're going to have to water that tree every single day just to get it to survive. And there's a really good chance, even if you are watering that tree every single day, you're washing out nutrients, and that tree still might not make it because it has no chance to get established before the hot season comes. So if you live, like I said, where I do in the southeast, maybe even the southwest, west coast, whatever, if you happen to live in one of our climates, it makes much more sense to transplant in the fall. That way your tree has at least a fighting chance. Now, in order to make sure I have everybody with me when I talk about all this stuff, especially the terminology, I'm going to go ahead and go over a few pieces here with this little sapling that I dug up just now of an oak tree. Now, this is an oak tree that I found just randomly growing from one of the acorns, I'm sure, that fell down from that tree over there a couple years ago, or at least last year. Now, right here is basically the top of the roots, all right? Down, you got the roots. Up top, you have the actual plant. This is called the crown area, okay? The crown of the roots, meaning it sits at the top of your head, sits on top of the roots, the crown of the roots, all right? You never want to transplant above this because this is going to give it a very difficult chance to survive. If you go too low, you also run the problem of too much washout because you see right below the crown, you have some of the roots starting. And you see how important these roots are right here, okay? These are little feeder roots that you need to ensure the survival of this tree, okay? This is a perennial. Any tree is a perennial. Now, if you dig it and you transplant, like I said, too far up here, there's a really good chance this is going to rot. But if you go too far down, you leave these roots exposed, congratulations, these roots are going to dry out. And there's also a chance that this is not going to survive. So you have to know where the crown of the plant is. Most of the time, luckily, if you buy transplants from the store that happen to come in little pots, big pots, whatever, that level is basically right at the crown already. So that is your perfect guideline. Now, when you happen to be transplanting things like bare roots, okay, bare, B-A-R-E, not, rawr, bear, but, bear, like there's nothing else around, it just comes in, because a lot of times you order from online nurseries, they'll come as bare root plants, where they basically dig them up. You can cut off some of these little feeder roots and still be successful depending on how vigorous the tree is, as long as this main root is still here. The problem with that, especially if you plant, like spring or whatnot, the plant doesn't have enough time to send out more feeder roots to ensure that there's enough uptake of water. So what I like to do is I like to try to keep as many of these little feeder roots as I can intact. So the best way to do that, in my personal opinion, if you happen to get a bare root plant, is to make sure that you're planting in the fall, because in the fall the plant's going to be there established. It's not hot, it's not super stressful, so the plant's going to be able to send some of the extra energy that it's getting from the sun before the leaves fall into making brand new feeder roots. When those feeder roots get created over the course of winter, over the course of dormancy, when the following season comes around and the buds break and the leaves come out, you have a lot more roots that are established, meaning you have a much better chance of successful transplantation, and you're not going to potentially run into those problems of a hot day comes around and the plant dies. Now, does this mean that you can put down a transplant and then not ever water it? No, of course not. In the first 3 years especially, you have to make sure you're watering, depending on the plant, at least once a week, sometimes more, especially if it's a fruiting plant, because you have to make sure there's enough water available. But the general rule I like to say is that first year especially is one of the most crucial times in watering, because there's not enough of these feeder roots to keep the plant alive. So you have to water more frequently than you normally would until the root system becomes established. So now that all that part has been established, we can go to our nursery, which I have already come back from. We can go to the nursery and pick out a couple plants that we would like to put down onto our property. So let's just take a little trip to the nursery so I can show you exactly what I picked out. Here we are with my local nursery. It's about an hour away from me. It's called Wingard's in Lexington, South Carolina. I like this place because it has a good native plant section. So we are going to pick up golden St. John's wort. I've been wanting to get this for a while. It's great for nesting cover, but it's very good for insects, butterflies especially, and you know it's medicinal because it's St. John's wort. And also the spice bush. Again, another thing that's going to be really good for insects, specifically butterflies, but it also has berries that are going to help you spice up your food. That's why it's called spice bush. Alrighty, so here's what I got from the nursery. Right here is the St. John's wort. Over here is the spice bush, and this is parsley, because again, if I'm going over transplanting, I might as well show how to transplant everything. Make it super easy, foolproof for every single person who may be watching this, even if you have a brown or black thumb. So we're going to go ahead and plant this spice bush. Keep in mind, the reason why I bought both of these is for probably videos later on. But St. John's wort is one of those plants that has a tendency to spread. So you want to make sure you're putting it in a spot that if it does spread, you don't really mind, okay? Don't be putting it right there smack dab in the middle of your garden while you're growing your food. And when it starts spreading to your vegetable beds, wonder, what happened? Why did I do this? So if you knowingly know going in that it has a tendency to spread, which you can easily research online, then you know to probably put it in a place that you can potentially mow around, or maybe even put it into a pot. Spice bush is along the same lines. It also likes to form thickets, and it kind of has a little bit of a spreading tendency. So again, we have to consider where we're going to put this. Also, you're going to have to make sure that you understand where the plant's going to succeed, okay? Where it's going to be the most successful. A lot of plants, especially fruiting plants, require full sun. Full sun meaning at least 7 to 8 hours a day of sunlight, if not more. 6 is by far the minimum that you're going to want to give any full sun variety, okay? 6 is more considered partial shade at that point. This variety, spice bush, actually likes partial shade to full sun. If it goes full sun, it's going to get very unwildly. And if you put it, that is my favorite cat ever. And if you put it in a full shade environment, it's going to grow very tall and leggy. You're not going to get the shrubbing effect that you actually want. So it has to be you got to be considerate of where you want to put this stuff, because it's going to want to form thickets. It's going to want to spread around. So you either want to mow around it, most likely. And if you're putting it into a place with, let's say, partial shade, then you want to make sure that it's not going to get more shade as things around it grow. Does that make sense? So you have to be very careful of where you're going to plant this stuff. You can't just go willy-nilly there or there. You got to really think about it. And one of the reasons why I got this is because I mow around in my garden especially, but my fruit tree area, this is one of those perfect plants that takes, partial shade, but it's not going to be one that's going to complain too much if it gets a lot of sun. So it's perfect between two trees, which is why I have it, and I want to show you how to actually transplant it. Alright, so now for the most important part, where am I going to put this? I got my elderberry right here, I got one of my fig trees right behind me, and my olive tree over here. So it's going to give me a decent amount of sunlight even when they grow up, and this because the sun tracks this way. So I get a decent amount of sunlight here, and we should be good to go in terms of wind protection, and even the course of, say, wintertime, still getting enough sun, because as you see, the sun's still beaming down on me here. So I'm going to go ahead and dig a hole right here, and we're going to go ahead and put this probably right about there. So let's go ahead and dig a hole. And before anyone comes at me about having a brand new shovel, oh, you don't really do this because you got a brand new shovel. Here's my old one that I broke. So yeah, I've already killed tools, so that's why I got a brand new shovel. Alrighty, here is our hole. We want to make sure that we dig far enough on the outside we can still put a nice couple handfuls every single direction around, but we also want to make sure it's level. Don't go too deep. Again, we got to keep that crown above. So in order to do that, we're going to make sure that we are softening the dirt below where we're going to actually put our transplant. Alright, so we're going to lift the dirt or lift the pile up. So again, that crown is above the surrounding dirt. So again, we're not quite there yet. We're going to put a few more handfuls of dirt here just to make sure that we are in a good situation. All right, there we go. Now that crown is about the same level as the surrounding dirt, so we're good to go. Now, at this point, I like to rough up the edges here because you know when the shovel comes down in this direction, it kind of makes it so it smoothens out that dirt. So if you take like a screwdriver or a trowel or something and just kind of rough up that edge, it's going to give an area for those roots to want to latch into. So that's why I like to go in the holes that I dig, and I like to just score up all the edges because again, it gives it a nice little area for those roots of that new plant to be able to reach in instead of wanting to go in a downward direction. Okay, so now all you're going to do is just take all that extra dirt that you pulled out of the hole when you initially dug it, and you're going to loosen it up with your hand and fill it around. Once you get about halfway, that's when you're going to want to bring in some water. You're going to use the water because it's going to help, number one, moisten the actual roots that you have, and it's going to help to take away some of those voids, those air pockets, before you fill the rest in. Once you fill it in to the point where it's level, then you're going to want to step around it because stepping around it's going to compact that dirt again a little bit more, and you're going to see where you need to add a little bit more dirt to make sure it's level with the surrounding grass or dirt that you may have planted with. So once it's level and everything's good, don't fill it up too much around, don't make a little volcano around the center stem, but just make sure everything's level, and then you can go ahead and mulch it. Mulching is going to be one of the most important steps because it conserves moisture. It also helps insulate those roots from temperature swings, and you don't want to put the mulch right up against the stem because it encourages, mice and bugs or whatever to chew on the stem. But other than that, once you get your mulch on and water it down, you are done. Congratulations, you have successfully transplanted a perennial. Go ahead and give yourself a round of applause, but make sure you're watering about once a week to make sure, even during the winter time, to make sure this plant really succeeds. All right, now we're going to do the parsley. Super easy. Same principle. Tap all the sides, that way it comes out. Comes out in a nice ball like this. Find a place you want to put it and dig down. Remember, keep the crown from going too far down. Right, we're right at the crown. That's it. So there you have it, super duper easy. I told you that was very simple, okay? Just one of those things where I want to make sure everybody's on the same page with me to understand exactly why you do some of the things that you do when you're transplanting, basically to increase the odds of success. Now, I know there's a big thing going around where people like to put potting soil down in the holes with the trees or whatever they're putting down. I don't personally do that for the sole purpose that my soil is not very bad. It's just not really full of organic matter. The reason why I don't do that is because I've seen way too many examples of people putting potting soil in with the tree they put down, and those tree roots basically just stay in the potting soil. They never go to the surrounding soil because it's too good here, which puts them in a big old clump, and they never go to the surrounding roots. So if you just blend the stuff together, they have no choice but to go to the surrounding soil they're going to be living in, and you got a much better chance of success. So that's why I don't use a potting soil. So hopefully this video helps you out. If it did, please do me a humongous favor and give this one a thumbs up. I would very much appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel if you are not, and I will catch y'all later, okay? Bye.